All right, for lesson two, we're going to talk about costs for finding a place to live, either renting or buying. So if you take a look at the first question, the average person spends 25% of their income on rent. If someone makes $62,000 a year wants to spend 25% of their income on rent, how much can you afford each month? The key word here is month. So if you take a look at what I did first, you take your $62,000 and you multiply it by 25% as a decimal. Don't forget to turn it into a decimal. And you get 15,500 per year. Well, we also need to then divide that by 12. So you can afford about $1,291 per month on rent at a $62,000 salary. Now, this is, again, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. You also run into some upfront costs. So these are costs before you move into an apartment. Now, not everybody does this. You can do this on your own, look through magazines and articles, but if you want somebody else to do this for you, they will typically charge you a small fee, say 10% of your first month's rent, to look for an apartment. Most places will also come up with or ask you to come up with a first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit for the landlord. So let's say a realtor finds you a $1,200 a month apartment. How much will you have to spend? Pause the video and try the problem first. Hopefully you took a moment to pause and try the problem. And here is the first thing that I did. How much do you need to pay up front before? So the first thing is you're going to need to pay $120 to the realtor for a fee. Then you have first month, last month's, and security. So you'll probably spend around $3,000, just a little bit more. It was a down payment to move into the apartment. So a couple quick questions. Why do you think they're asking for the first and last month's rent? This will be something if you're looking for an apartment. They want to get paid for something. They want to make sure that you don't just kind of skip out on them. So they will always ask for first and last month's rent. Some maybe just first month's, but they want to make sure they get paid something because somebody's going to be moving out and you're going to be moving in, and they want to make sure that they get paid every single month. Security deposit, this comes down to damages. When you leave, you can get this returned if you leave the place clean. But if you leave the place a mess, they will keep the deposit and use part of that deposit to clean or paint walls or whatever they have to do. And other expenses that you can expect to pay, cable, gas, electric, typical bills. Some cable, gas are included. Sometimes electric is included in the original price, but quite often they're not, and you'll have to pay for them on your own outside of that cost. The other option we have is owning a home. We can look at two reasons for owning versus renting. After a period of time, you own the house, unlike an apartment that you rent month to month. The other thing is you can paint, add to it, build on it, do whatever you want to the house because you are owning it even while you're paying it off. Whereas renting better, for the most part, no maintenance. A lot of times younger kids who are going to college and working full-time job don't have the time to mow the lawn and upkeep of the lawn and fix pieces on the house. And a lot of times retired people will do this as well because they just don't want to do a lot of the outside work. They just want to rent the house, live there, and be good. So here's a bunch of common terms. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is fill these out on your own. You can type these terms directly into the internet. Go to Google. You can type them in and you can fill these things out. I will be checking this in your notes section because it'll be also here in your notes. But these right here are very simple. Fill them out. Find the definitions because these are things that you want to know and they're not worth just talking in a video on. So go look them up when you get that chance. You can actually pause the video now and start looking for them if you like. Now, here's another piece that happens, and this is just a loan calculator. So again, we are going to this Bankrate site. You can just click right on this if you're here. And the Bankrate site, what we're going to look at is, look at the difference. We're just going to compare interest, 4%, 6%, and 8%. And notice the difference over the same exact price of the house, 150, 150, 150. But look at the difference in payments as your interest goes up. And I believe in this problem, if you want to look up here, it's amazing the difference that interest can build, especially because of the length of time. You will not see this drastic of a difference, but interest builds up over time. It's a very, very long process. If you ever wanted to look at this on a graph, which we will get into later in this course, but some of you might know this now, the graph for this interest function looks like this. So over 30 years, it starts to blow up over here. And that's what happens over the course of 30 years. Now, if we did no interest, this is just no interest whatsoever. So if you compare this one to up here, you'll notice even if you have a low interest rate, a lot of your money is going into interest when you buy a mortgage. And that's, again, because you're paying it off over 30 years. So it's something good to know and something very good to understand. Now, the last section of this is not just talking about interest rates, but sometimes loan terms. Some people would prefer not to take it out over 30 years. Excuse me. Some people don't want to take it out over 30 years. So what they will do is they will take it out over a period of 20 years or 15 years. So if we think about the interest rates, you want to make a guess here, you can pause the video and just make a guess on how much difference there will be in a monthly payment for these. And here you go. You can do this on Bankrate, or you can take my word for it. If you take a look at this, though, for the course of 30 years, this is your payment for a loan. If you want to pay it off over 20 years, you're not paying much more, and you have 10 less years to pay this in. And again, if you want to pay it off over 15 years, it's still not that much more. It's only about $400 a month more. But if you take a look, compare this number over 15 years, that's actually lower than when we had the really high interest rate. So if you can get low interest rates, you can take a lot of years off your mortgage and pay it off quicker, which provides the question, what's the advantage of having a mortgage over 15 versus 30? The truth is just paying it off sooner. You're going to be paying less interest over time because you're only paying it off over 30 years. The disadvantage is you're just going to have a higher monthly payment for the short term that you're doing it for. If you look here, you could save, you look up here, versus this, you're spending probably about close to $400 a month more for this mortgage in here over 15 years for this one in 30. But after 15 years, you don't have to pay anything else over here, which is one of the advantages. But if you don't have that money right now, you might have to be forced to get a 30-year loan. So you're going to have a higher monthly payment, but you'll pay it off sooner if you can do that. Now, the last section here is just a basic understanding of property taxes. They do 19.3 per 1,000. This is how it's written. If you ever go online, I check Canandaigua. How much would you pay if you had a $150,000 house? And you set up this simple equation. It's just like the fractions we did in the previous unit. 19.3 over 1,000 is the same as x over 150,000. And of course, we're not going to do that last problem. If you want to do a quick cross multiply, 1,000x equals 2895000, and then you can, the next step is divide by 1,000, and that's where you come up with x is 2895. So if you are in Canandaigua, you purchase a house, you'll spend $2,895 on your taxes, and this is how the tax rate looks.